Hi all PMP aspirants, I am Pratibha. Do you often face a situation where you have studied a topic but not able to answer questions pertaining to them correctly? If your answer is yes, I want to tell you you're not alone. I also face similar situation when I was preparing for PMP exam, and so do other fellow PMP aspirants. There are many confusing and relative similar terms we come across when we prepare for this exam, and such confusing terms become even more daunting when questions are being asked on them. In such cases, eliminating wrong option becomes a bit tricky as option seems closer. When I was preparing for PMP exam, I made sure I make note of all such terms, understand them correctly, each one of them, so that when questions are asked on them, I can answer them with confidence and I can answer them correctly. Therefore, to help all the PMP aspirants, I am starting with this series where we will discuss all such topics and practice questions in the end. One such topic which we are going to discuss through the help of this video is work performance data, work performance information, and work performance report. So what are we waiting for? Let's start.
So let's first understand the concept of work performance data, information and report. Then we will understand the difference amongst all three of them, and then we will move on to understand the journey behind getting all three pieces, data, information and report, like how do we derive them, at what stage of the project, and finally how do we make use of all three pieces. And at the end of our presentation we will do few questions to test our understanding. So let's begin. Firstly, what is work performance data? So work performance data is the actual observations made during the execution phase of the project. So once our initiation and planning phase of the project is completed, and when we move on to the execution phase of the project, then we make actual observations regarding the knowledge areas, different knowledge areas, which can be cost, schedule, scope, and all other remaining knowledge area of the project. Now you will ask me what these row observations are all about and how do they look like. So let's just move on to our next slide to take few example. So here on your left side you can see all the knowledge areas, and here on the left side of my table I have put in the example of work performance data, and on the right side you can see work performance information. So speaking about work performance data for let's say schedule knowledge area, then how do it looks like? It would look like when does the work completed, what work has completed, what was the actual start and end date of the schedule activities, and if I am following up the agile methodology, then what are the story points that have been completed and what are the status of all the activities and deliverables, whether they are completed, work in progress or pending. If we move on to cost knowledge area, then it would look like what is the actual cost incurred for completion of a particular work package, what is the current utilization of contingency reserves and the management reserve that is being made, so on and so forth. We will discuss all these examples later on. So these are the row observations. What I mean by this is that these all are the performance related data of the project, which is the actual status of the project, and this observation is made during execution phase of the project. Now moving to work performance information. So how work performance information is different from work performance data? It is different from work performance data in a way that work performance information is derived from this row observations, which are made during the execution phase of the project. How do we derive it? By analyzing our work performance data. Again the question comes, how do we analyze work performance data? So in order to put things into context so that we can take decisions and we can understand what is the current performance of our project, So there are certain baselines at the planning stage of the project. We created certain baseline of the project, cost baseline, scope baseline, and schedule baseline. Then there are certain other aspects of the project which we have planned. I have planned how do I'm going to do the communication of my project. I have planned the resources for my project. I have planned the stakeholder engagement and what is the level of engagement that is required. I have planned the vendors of my project. How am I going to make payment to those vendors. All of these are defined into my SOP. So regarding other knowledge areas also, I have defined my risk planning. I have made certain planning regarding the quality of the project. So I have a planned data with me, and now I also have the actual observations with me, which is made during execution phase of the project. So what I will do in the monitoring and controlling phase of the project, I will compare my planned data against the actual data to understand whether to firstly understand the performance of my project, whether I am going as per my plan, whether I am ahead of my plans, or whether I am lagging behind somewhere. Because this information will help me in decision making process. This information will make me understand the actual status of the project. If any corrective action is required, then I can make use of work performance information. Work performance data alone in itself cannot be made use for the purpose of decision making. But once this data is analyzed, and which is being done into the monitoring and controlling phase of the project, when we have understood, when we compared this data against our planned baselines and other project documents, when we understood that there is a variance and what is the degree of variance, if there is any corrective action required, if there is any change required in our planning, any change required in our plan of action, any forecasting that we can make regarding the status of our project, that when I'm going to complete my next phase of the project, all these forecasting can be made through the help of work performance information. So this is being done in the monitoring and controlling phase of the project. Now moving on to work performance report. So work performance report is nothing, just the just the dissipation of the work performance information to the relevant stakeholders so that they can take decisions, they can take certain actions if required, and to make them aware about the status of the project. So this we will do during our managed communication process. So I hope the concept is clear to us. When work performance data is the raw observation made during the execution phase of the project. These are the actual data points regarding each knowledge area. When these data points are made use of, and when we have put them in context to determine the performance of the project, when we compare them with our baselines and other project documents, then it becomes a work performance information which is done into a monitoring and controlling phase of the project. And finally, work performance report is the work performance information which is given to our stakeholders so that they can take decisions to make them aware about the project status and corrective action is required. Now let's just see certain examples so that we can get clarity on what we are discussing. So first, let's take example of schedule. So work performance data would look like what is the work that is completed, what is the actual start and end date of the schedule activities, what are the story points completed. In agile methodology, we check the story points that are completed. So this would reflect into work performance data. What is the status of activities and the deliverables, whether they are completed, work in progress, and pending. This is all work performance data. Now let's look at work performance information. How does a work performance information would look like in schedule knowledge area? So work actually completed versus work planned to be completed, whether there is any variance, and if there is any variance, what is the degree of variance? Is it 5%, 10%, or more? Because accordingly the actions will be taken. Again, what is the variance at each work package level and control account level? So what is our schedule variance and what is our schedule performance index? And basis this, we will also do the forecasting on the actual completion of the activities. So this is all work performance information where we compared the actual work completed with the work which was planned to be completed. If there is any variance, what is the degree of variance there? And basis the variance also, we will understand the actual completion of the activities when that would happen. We will also make the forecasting. When it comes to cost, we will see what is the actual cost that has incurred, what is the utilization of contingency reserves and the management reserves that has taken place. If we speak about work performance information, it would look like what is the actual cost incurred versus planned. Again, is there any variance? If there is any variance, what is the degree of variance? What is the variance threshold which we decided that we can take, or any additional funds is required to perform the activities, or so if there is any deficit of funds, or if there is any surplus of the funds. Surplus of funds means if we have made any cost savings so far. Now talking about the scope knowledge area, scope speaks about the requirements of the project. So any degree of compliance with the requirements of the project. If there is if the requirement doesn't comply with what we planned, then what is the number of those non-conformities? If any requirement that is being fulfilled but it doesn't conform to the scope of the project, or let's say that there are certain deliverables that were planned but these deliverables are not accepted by our client. So what is the number of those deliverables which are not accepted by the clients, and what is the severity of the non-conformities, and also the number of validation cycles performed in a period of time. So this is regarding the work performance data. Now moving to work performance information. So this will speak about the deliverables accepted or not accepted by the client and what is the reason behind it. If there is any variance, and what is the causes of those variance, like how do we deviated from the scope. If there is any scope creep or any gold plating that is being done while we are fulfilling our requirement, and if that is being done, why that has happened. So what is the root cause of having a scope creep into our project or gold plating of our project, and how this all of this will impact our schedule cost or any other knowledge area, any forecast of our future scope performance. So this would all come into work performance information. So if you look at this data point, uh, like degree of compliance with the requirement, this cannot help me in decision making process. But if I look at this right side of mine where I have displayed the work performance information, then it speaks about the deliverables which are accepted, not accepted, and what is the reason behind it, what is the root cause of that problem. And this will actually help me in correction if any correct plan, if any correction is required in my plan. Now moving to the quality. So I will make certain observation regarding the product status, the quality metrics of the project, what is the technical performance of mine, what is the quality information on schedule performance, cost performance, and other knowledge area. Then speaking about work performance information, it would speak about if there is any rejections of our work, if any rejection that has happened, what is the causes of those rejection, what is the reason behind them. Then if there is any rework required, if if there is any corrective action which is required, what is the recommendations of them, what is the list of the deliverables which are verified by us, which has passed the quality test, then what is the status of our quality metrics and the need for process adjustment. So this would cover into work performance information. So if you look at all of them closely, you will understand that we are actually comparing the actual data with our planned data. Then we are taking note of the variance. Then we are trying to understand what is the degree of variance. If any variance that has taken place, what is the reason, root cause of that variance, and what is the corrective action required, if there any recommendation for the corrective action, how this all of this will impact any other knowledge area, and the performance of the project. This all of this comes into work performance information. So if you look at the left side data points, you will understand that these alone cannot be used for decision making process. But if I make you if I look at my work performance information, this definitely can tell me the status, real status of my project, whether I am lagging behind, how am I performing. So if anybody asks you, being a project manager, that please let us know what is the status of our project, what are we doing in terms of, how are we doing in terms of schedule of the project, cost of the project, or any other knowledge area, then at that point in time, being a project manager, you need to make use of work performance information. And how do you derive work performance information? You will derive it from work performance data by comparing it with our baselines. Now let's just quickly cover these other examples which I have covered. Please go through them very carefully, because you can get questions basis these tables, and this table would help you in getting your answers correct in your real PMP exam. This would actually make you prepare about how do we approach our uh, questions into PMP exam. So moving on to resources, in work performance data would tell me what is the number and the type of resources I have used. Work performance information will tell me if there is any resource shortage or surplus, or if there is any issue with the resources I'm using, if there is any gaps in the availability of the resources. Moving on to communication, what is the types and quantity of communication that have actually been distributed? If I speak about work performance information, this will tell me what is the performance of my communication, what is the feedback on the communications which I am giving to my stakeholders. uh, do they like do they like the communications that is being made to the relevant stakeholders so far or not? Or if there is any survey that is being performed, what is the result of those survey on the communication effectiveness of the project? Now moving on to procurement will tell me uh, the data regarding the vendors, like what is the technical performance of them, what are the activities that have been started by my vendor, the activities that are in progress or completed, what is the cost that have been incurred so far, and what is the status of any seller invoices, whether they are paid, pending, yet to be paid. If I speak about work performance information, I will compare the performance of my seller or the vendor with the deliverables received and what I have planned with them. So in my SOW, I also define what is the task, what are the tasks that are required to be completed by my vendor, and by what date they need to give me those deliverables. If I compare uh, my SOW with the actual performance of the vendor, then I will come to know how my vendor is performing or how my seller is performing. So the technical performance achieved, the cost incurred, and the accepted against the SOW budget for the work performed. Risk. So for risk, any responses that have been implemented, any risks that have occurred, any risks that are active and those have been closed out. This would come into work performance data. Work performance information will tell me what is the effectiveness of my response planning, and what is the implementation process. How effective my response planning was. Is there any unidentified risk that has occurred into my project which I didn't take note of during my risk planning? Is there any gap into the planning which I have made, or is there any gap into the implementation that have been made? So all of this can be done into work performance information. Now, lastly, moving to stakeholder management. So, stakeholders which are supportive of the project, what is their level of engagement? What is the type of engagement? So this would come into work performance data. Work performance information will tell me the level of current project support and compared to the desired level of engagement, as I have defined it into my stakeholder engagement assessment metrics. So there I have actually defined a stakeholder cube, which will tell me what are my most important stakeholders that need to be always aware of my status of the project. There are certain stakeholders that needs to be involved into each and every decision making. So all of this comes into work performance information. So now that we have understood the difference between work performance data and work performance information for each knowledge area, let's just move on to understand the summary of what we have discussed so far. Work performance data, we know, is a raw quantified actual data received from the observation in the execution phase of the project. This data alone cannot be used for the decision making purpose, and therefore we have work performance information with us, which is work performance data. When it gets analyzed and it is put into the context, then what we get is work performance information. To get the work performance information, we compare planned baselines with the actual observations being made in the execution phase of the project, which is work performance data. Once this planned baselines and the planned um, and the other project documents are compared with the actual observation, we come up with the variances which is there. What is the degree of variance? What is the root cause behind having all those variances? Is there any corrective action required? Is there any correction? Is there any changes required in our future planning? And also we can do the forecasting basis the observations and basis the analysis which is being made, and that is what we get in work performance information. Work performance information uh, is the output of monitoring and controlling phase of the project. Now moving to work performance report. Work performance report is the dissemination of work performance information to the relevant stakeholders of the project. It happens during the management communication process area, and project manager can give various status reports, progress reports, defect histograms, risk summaries to the various stakeholders to make them aware about the status of the project, and he can present various dashboards, heat reports, stoplight charts to the stakeholders to make them aware about the status of the project again and to gauge their attention to certain areas. Now, as we discussed that we will do certain questions in the end to test our understanding. So here we have first question on our screen. Let's do this. In a meeting with an IT project manager, the delivery director asked for information on seller invoices paid for the project. What should the project manager review? Our options are work performance data, work performance information, procurement management plan, and procurement SOW. Now, if we just go back to the understanding which we have in this lecture, what we understood is that any actual observations made during the execution phase of the project, that comes into work performance data. And once this data is being analyzed and contextualized, then it becomes a work performance information. Here, a simple data point is being asked whether a particular invoice is being paid or not. Then I know that this information will be there into work performance data, and I will get it into the procurement knowledge area, because procurement knowledge area will tell me whether the invoices of a vendor is being paid or not. Now, let's see, we also have two more options. So we have already eliminated work performance information. Why? Because the delivery director has not asked for any qualitative information in terms of how we are doing uh, with this particular vendor, how this vendor is performing, against the scope of work that is being given to this particular vendor, whether the payments which are made to this vendor are in line with the payment scheduled planned for this vendor. So there is no qualitative sort of information which is asked by delivery director. He is just asking a simple quantitative piece of information that a particular seller invoice is being paid or not. So I know that it is work performance data. It is not work performance information. Again, why not procurement management plan and why not procurement SOW? So why not procurement management plan? We can look at the explanation here. Procurement management plan will tell me how the payment will be done to the vendor, and procurement SOW will tell me the payment schedule to the vendor. So am I going to make the payment to the vendor once in one go, all the payment in one go? At the end of my project, am I going to make the payment to my vendor in schedule, in different phases, once the acceptance of the deliverables has taken place? All of this is defined into the SOW signed with the vendor. So we are not talking about that. We just need a simple piece of information, and that will be covered into work performance data, and it would come from the procurement knowledge area. Now let's move on to the second question. Second question is, project team applied the crushing technique to bring the project back on track. Project manager is sharing the latest project information in a meeting with all key stakeholders who looked worried at the start of the session. He uses the stoplight chart earned value graph to display the current state and the future forecast of the project, which process is getting performed in the scenario stated above. Options are manage stakeholder engagement, B manage communication, C monitor communication, and D control schedule. So now, if I look at this question closely, the first line tells me that we tried to bring the project back on track by applying the crushing technique. So I know that I tried to control the schedule of the project. But right now, what the project manager is doing is he's sharing some project information with stakeholders, and what this information is: stoplight chart, earned value graph, so that he can tell them the current state and the future forecast of the project. So it means there is some communication that is taking place in this particular question, which is being made by the project manager, and he's sharing all of this. So I know for a fact, after just going through this session, is that stoplight chart, earned value graph, any dashboard or any heat chart can be reported, can be can take place in various reports of the project manager, which can be progress reports, status report, any risk summaries which the project manager is sharing with the stakeholders to give them the status of the project, to make them aware, and if any corrective action is required, they can take it. So I know that he currently, my project manager is sharing work performance reports with all the key stakeholders, and this question is asking which process is getting performed here. So I can say there is something going with the manage with communication. So it's not control schedule, it's not manage stakeholder engagement. So I might be engaging with my stakeholders through the communication, but right now what the project manager is doing is that he's performing the communication. So again, from these two options, B and C, monitoring communication comes after managing communication. Execution, after the execution phase of the execution phase of the project is running or completed, then we monitor and control. in parallel. So first, for that to happen, execution phase should take place. And here right now, because project manager is currently engaging in communicating the status of the project to the stakeholders, then this would belong to managed communication process area. You can also read the explanation given below. Answer is B. Project manager is sharing earned value graphs. It means it's a work performance report that is being shared by project manager, and it means it is a managed communication process because it helps in decision making process. Now, if I just go back to my summary, see here we have discussed this, that work performance report in the is shared with our stakeholders in the managed communication knowledge area of the project. So project manager can share status report, progress report, and he can present heat reports, stoplight chart, dashboards with the stakeholders to gauge their attention. And this is exactly what is happening in this question here. So I hope the answer is an explanation is clear to us. Now let's just move on to the third and the last question of our session. A project sponsor asks the project manager how well the project is doing in terms of budget. The project manager reviews the work performance data and informs the sponsor that the project is doing well. What is wrong with the project manager's approach? Now, without even looking at the option, what I can say after understanding our session is that there is definitely something wrong with project manager's approach here, because project sponsor has asked for how well the project is doing. It means he's looking for a qualitative piece of information while the project manager is reviewing the work performance data. What I know is that work performance data has out of context meaning, and I cannot look just alone at work performance data to answer a qualitative piece of information, because work performance data is just an actual quantitative observation. So let's just look at our options. Nothing is wrong with PM approach. This option is eliminated. Then we are left with three more options. Project manager should have reviewed work performance information. Project manager should have reviewed cost baseline, and D option is project manager should have consulted accounting department. So if I look at the D option, then consulting an accounting department, being a project manager, would not be a suitable choice for me. Why? Because being a project manager, I should have the knowledge of how well my project is doing. That's basically what is the work of a project manager is. You can definitely consult accounting department, but this would not be my primary choice. Now I am left with option B and C, reviewing work performance information and reviewing cost baseline. So reviewing cost baseline can give me can give me some information about budget, but it will not provide me the complete information of my budget. Why? Because budget also includes the management reserve, which is not included in cost baseline. So now I am left with work performance information. So I will choose work performance information as my answer, because work performance information gives me a qualitative view, and it compares the actual performance with the planned performance, with the planned baselines of my project, and then provides me a variance, degree of variance, and other pieces of information which will help me provide the answer of this question. Now let's just look at the explanation. Answer is B. To determine how well the project is doing in terms of budget, the project manager should have reviewed work performance information rather than work performance data. Work performance data by itself should not be used in the decision making process, as it has only out of context meaning. Work performance information, on the other hand, is correlated and contextualized and provides a foundation for project decisions. So I hope the topic is clear to you. Now you can answer and understand what is work performance data, information, and report. What are the differences amongst all three of them? How do we derive them? And what is the usage of all three of them? You have understood the application of it. Um, if you have any feedback for me, and for the topic which we have discussed, then please do write back to me. And thank you so much.